Welcome back to the Speaking and Communicating podcast. I am your host, Roberta. If you are looking to improve your communication skills, both professionally and personally, this is the podcast for you. And by the end of this episode, please remember to subscribe, give a rating, and a review. Today, I am joined by Susan Murphy. She is a broadcast voice coach who works with anchors, news reporters, and the like. But before you assume that this doesn't apply to you, hold on to your seats because there's so much that she's going to share that every single person across the globe is going to benefit from and how they can use their voice authentically. Before I go any further, please help me welcome Susan. Hi.
Roberta, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. What a delightful conversation I think we're going to have.
I am so happy that you're here too, because after our initial conversation, a lot of things have blown my mind already. So I need to be calm, first of all, so that I can carry this conversation forward with the proper questions. But first of all, just give us a little bit of your background.
Sure. A broadcast voice coach now, but I've been in the broadcast industry for about 40 years. Started right after college. I was a traffic reporter, a news anchor. I was a news director, worked in television, mostly public television. I was a narrator, a voice actor. And now I taught at two universities too, and I lived on Long Island, New York. I taught at Stony Brook and I taught at Hofstra, and I taught upper level TV presentation courses and loved doing that. And then I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina a couple of years ago and continued the voiceover work and got into my head last year after listening to some local anchors and reporters. Gosh, their voices could use some leveling up. They really could just use a little bit of work to bring their storytelling to the next level. So I thought, well, maybe I could be a broadcast voice coach, which is really unusual. I don't know of too many others, people like me. And I ran this idea past a news director friend, and he thought it was a great idea. And so I started the business, mostly getting referrals from LinkedIn. And I've been amazed how the business has grown over the last year. And what I can teach anchors and reporters in finding their authentic voices, as you pointed out, really does transcend job title.
So did you know at a young age that you wanted to be in broadcasting, or you kind of fell into it?
No, it was one of those things I knew I always wanted to do. I'm not shy. I kind of crave the spotlight a little bit. I love to act and sing. Mm-hmm. And I just thought I wanted to be on TV, kind of like, Jane Pauley, who, and then Katie Couric took over for Jane Pauley. And I wanted to host the Today Show. Ideally, that was my perfect job. Didn't happen. And I'm really grateful it didn't happen.
I love that. So when it comes to these voices, and especially because of the clientele you work with, don't TV anchors and news reporters, aren't they supposed to sort of like have a monotone, don't show emotion type of voice because they are supposed to appear at least objective?
Very good question. And that's a bit of a fallacy. And even anchors and reporters fall for that fallacy. Yes, we need to be objective in how we report. We need to be fair in how we tell the story, but that doesn't mean we need to be monotone. That doesn't mean particularly for stories of great importance or stories that are, as we have seen so much lately, that are incredibly tragic and happen over and over again. You can't not be involved. And if you're going to present the story with your authentic voice, which comes from your diaphragm, by making sure you use that appropriate, authentic air and energy, the tone of the story is then very easy to access once you get the pitch of your voice properly done. A lot of people in our business breathe very shallowly, as most of us do in
Most
conversation.
of us, yeah, we don't think about it. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So what happens is we're not accessing the best pitch that we could be using. And when I'm watching you on television or listening to you in a podcast or on the radio, I want to be able to enjoy your voice. I want to not be annoyed by it. I want to recognize it as authentic. I want to hear we all have beautiful tones that come from the diaphragm, just that very few people use them for whatever reason. And there are many reasons.
Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm saying. I think for them, it seems like a job requirement, just like when you act. If you put on a persona, think of Meryl Streep, my ultimate acting idol. She puts on these different personas and she sounds different because
Sure.
she gets into character. I've always had the feeling that news anchors are the same. They get into character.
Yes. And that's a shortcoming as far as I'm concerned.
Hmm.
15, 20, 40 years ago, you had only a few choices to watch the news. You sat down at 6 o'clock and you watched the news because you didn't have a phone to distract you. You didn't have other things going on in your life. You didn't multitask 15 and 20 and 40 years ago. And many people in television back then came up through radio news. Well, now there's not a whole lot of radio news. And TV reporters who are coming up don't get trained so much in voice. Now, the young people I worked with at Hofstra and Stony Brook, oh, yeah, we got trained in voice because that's what I do. And I'm happy to say that a lot of the kids that I worked with 15 and 20 years ago at the universities are doing very well on air in places around the country. So being able to have a voice that I want to lean into is important on air, on Zoom, in a boardroom, with your family, with your significant other. I like to say, if your eyes are the windows to your soul, your mouth and your speech is the front door. People
Please say
judge
that
you.
again.
If your eyes are the windows to your soul, your mouth and your voice are the front door.
Hmm.
It's how people first make an impression about you. It's maybe not fair, but we judge people on their voices. And I just think that we owe it not only to ourselves, but the people we communicate with to speak from our authentic selves. When you're speaking authentically, you are speaking in the way I teach it. You are speaking deliberately, with intention, and you are way more likely not to say something you regret. You're way more likely to be more measured in your speaking and your conversation. Your podcast is speaking and conversation.
Right.
They're different, but they're the same. And if we can
That's
learn
why sorry to interrupt you. That's why I titled it that way, because a lot of people think speaking is communicating only.
No, ma'am, right? We know that.
Yes.
It's how you do it. It's how you use it. When you're speaking deliberately and with intention, you're occasionally taking a pause because you're not going to run at the mouth. You're going to think before you say something, even if it's just the tiniest of pauses. And every time you pause, you can breathe again, bringing air down into your diaphragm, speaking from your gut. That's why your diaphragm is down there. We talk about, oh, your gut. My gut told me not to do that. I had to trust my gut on that decision. We don't operate from our heads or hearts. Honestly, we operate from our gut. Reporters, especially, you're out covering a story. What am I going to ask? What am I looking at? What's important? So we have to trust our gut and we have to use it. And when we use it for communication, I think it makes the communication way more successful.
Here's the judgment part for me, which I find a little disturbing. The same way that we were told growing up, don't say that child is ugly. It's not something somebody made intentionally to have an ugly child, or don't say you are short, you are this, you are that. isn't the voice part of that, especially when you think about how we usually assume men will grow up and have deep voices, and
But
then
that's,
suddenly you meet a guy who speaks on a soprano voice and we got
yeah,
shocked and we judge him. Is
yes.
that something he created? Because it sounds to me like a looks thing we shouldn't judge.
That's very interesting question. I think we're all born with unique attributes. Are we using those attributes in the best way possible? And of course, you can argue about what's the best way possible with regard to how you look, how you walk, how you deal with other people in any given situation. But your voice is something, it's a very intimate tool that we have. Everybody has a unique voice, and very few of us, I think, use it well because we're not accessing the breath from our diaphragm. So I'm not asking anybody to change anything. What I'm doing is I'm helping you uncover the authentic voice that you can use to present yourself in the best way possible in speaking and communicating. And it's up to you whether you want to do it. You can choose not to. You can not use your very authentic voice. I work with men and women in broadcast, and primarily more women than men. Women don't have testosterone, they don't have a large Adam's apple, and they even have a smaller vocal fold area.
Right.
And what I'm learning about women, and I've worked with some who have taken it to the extreme, where their voices are very girlish, their voices are very breathy, or very baby doll, Barbie doll kind of thing. I had a couple of those when I was teaching in college. But even in a professional setting, yes, they went through J school and a TV station did hire them, but on camera, they're still using a voice that they used when they were much younger. And what I've learned with young women is very often, not always, but very often, that breathy or small girl voice is something that obviously goes back to their childhood. They use that voice because it served them well at that time, because of a domineering mother or father, because of a dysfunctional family, because using that voice got them what they wanted or what they needed. And then it never changed as they grew older and struck out on their own. They just never knew how to access their authentic voice. And what I'm finding I'm doing in my teaching is I'm giving them permission. They're giving themselves permission. I'm not giving them permission. They're giving themselves permission to find that real voice, not the one that was put on, not the one that was fake, not the anchor lady voice you think you need, not the I'm a news reporter voice that you think you need. It's all about the storytelling, using the voice that comes from your gut because that's who you are.
I'm intrigued because it sounds to me like there's a psychological explanation sometimes for how we use our voice. Is
Yeah.
that what this is?
Yeah, that's what this is.
This
And
is
I'm
the
not a
first
psychologist, and I can only unpack it to a small degree. But as I have conversation with these young women, and all I need to do is maybe suggest that could the voice they use today be something they used in childhood? And then little light bulbs go on, and pretty soon it's spilling out of them what their childhood was like. And after I show them the beautiful voice that's down there, their eyes fill with tears and they say, "This is so healing. Did not see that coming.
Even when you started this business, for you, it was just the voice. You had no idea there
No.
was an underlying issue, something that this is amazing.
And I think even men, to some degree, have a put on voice, and I get when I can uncover their real tone, their best speaking tone. Sometimes it's a matter of trying to eliminate a little vocal fry, or sometimes they go too far down to find their anchor voice or what. And no. I actually have to show them it has to come up a little bit. Whereas women, I very often have to show them how it's bolder and rounder and more beautiful from their diaphragm. It's deeper than they have any idea.
The woman explanation, here's my thought on that. You know how when we start dating and they say, oh, as a woman, to give a good first impression, you have to sound soft and feminine and sweet so that you attract the kind of man that you want to attract. Because isn't there a bit of a stereotype when a woman has a really deep voice, and just like the opposite that I said earlier with the men having a soprano voice, we judge that as well.
Yes.
So it isn't a lot of women, that's where they come from, because we were sort of trained to be that way.
Trained is a funny word. I don't know that anybody sits down and says, you really have to raise the pitch of your voice, and I don't know where it comes from, but it's a default motion that we fall into to get through our lives, or to make our family life acceptable or tolerable, or to make our dating life what we think it needs to be. It's all about what we think as opposed to what we should know about our voices. I am working with one presenter whose voice kind of is deep, which she may have inherited from her dad, who had this big booming voice. Now she's in her 30s at this point. And she said, and when he got angry, it was even more booming. So here she is, sort of born with lower tones, but she had a dad who just filled a room with that voice. And it often, if it was said in anger or a raised voice, made her cower. So she would back away from her natural tones, and she would get lighter, and she would speak with upspeak, and she would just be very light and the opposite of what her dad was, because she was afraid of that.
Not to trigger him.
Yeah.
And so she kept that up even into adulthood.
Yep.
Wow. I had no idea
I didn't either.
Voices that way. That is amazing.
Voice is so intimate. It is so wrapped up in who we are. I take it as an honor and a serious privilege to help these people uncover things about themselves that have just been repressed for whatever reason, and that to watch them blossom and bloom is truly my best. I don't care what you pay me. This is my reward, is to watch you bloom. I mean, I can give you the short voice lesson where, I can quickly show you ways to access your best pitches, vocal pitches, but then to see you step into it, because when you're using that voice, man, confidence grows. Confidence in whatever you're doing.
The phrase "find your voice"?
Yeah.
I've always assumed that it means you speak up for yourself, before, even if someone hurt your feelings, you don't say, "Susan, you hurt my feelings, please don't do that again." You say, "Oh, most people cower and don't say anything, or they don't want confrontation." For me, that phrase used to just mean you speak up for yourself. I had no idea that the voice attached to that, the actual pitch attached to that, was something that was part of the equation as well.
Sure. Although if getting you to speak up for yourself, to share your feelings with someone who has hurt you or whatever. And if you have to do it in a little voice or a high voice, just the fact that you are speaking up is a milestone for you. And yay, I applaud that. But think of how the other person is hearing that. It's part of communication. It's two-way. So if the other party is not hearing authenticity, is not hearing somebody who is communicating based in speaking from their gut and honoring their own voice and truth in the proper pitch, then you might not be taken so seriously. Yeah, fine.
You mentioned the boardroom earlier. Do the same principles apply?
Sure they do. Oh, yeah. Women traditionally, and I'd like to think it's changing, but women traditionally don't speak up because they think they're in competition with how men sound or how the boss sounds, depending on what their gender is. And they're afraid, or they don't like, or they don't think their voice means anything. Well, if you step into it from the point of authenticity, oh yeah, it's going to mean something. You're going to make the room turn around. You're not going to make the room turn around if you just meekly raise your hand and you're speaking so softly. People go, "What'd you say? Say it again." What? Doesn't take much to build resonance. It doesn't really take much to raise volume if that's what you need. It's all part of the game we play in business hierarchy, I guess.
It amazes me in how many aspects of our life we always think, play the part. Don't be you. Put that aside. When you step into this room, you have to play the part.
You have to be the part.
Be the part. And so that's why we keep all of who we are suppressed, in a sense. Speaking of the diaphragm, I remember that I used to think that voice coaches of musicians, singers, are the ones who focus on the diaphragm to bring out their best speaking voice.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me that it applies to just speaking as well.
What I teach is a conglomeration of everything I have learned over 40 years in the broadcast industry and taking singing lessons 20 years ago. I mean, I love to do regional theater and I love to be in the ensemble, and a speaking part, great. I'm your girl. Got cast in a musical where I had to sing a duet with another woman. You want me to do what? You want me to sing a duet? Okay. So I took what I call triage singing lessons. I had about 7 weeks to get my voice, and I had to sing the alto part. I wasn't even singing the melody. And so I worked with a vocal coach, and we just dug in and we worked hard, and everything she told me, I took to heart and I practiced, blah, blah, blah. And her coaching, by the time we finished, I realized, dear glory, what she has taught me in terms of how to sing better, perfect for speakers too. So I use a lot of what she taught me as well.
So starting today, we will all speak from a diaphragm, not just from the throat.
Right. Oh, sure. Yeah.
And one of the, sorry, carry on. Yes.
One of the quick tips that I have to help you speak better from your diaphragm, and this is something that a singing coach taught me, it was revelatory. If you do nothing else before you begin to speak, lower your shoulders, relax your shoulders. Why? Where do we carry tension and stress and anxiety?
Shoulders and back of the neck. That's why when you ask for a massage when you come home, oh, it's very tense.
So if you can let go of the tense muscles in your shoulders, what that automatically does is it relaxes the muscles into your neck and into your jaw and into your face. So that as you take that belly full of air with very heavy shoulders, You know, if I say to most people, take a deep breath, they're going to go, Taking a deep breath should not involve your shoulders ever. You take a deep breath and that air expands way down into your diaphragm and it pushes out against the waistband of your pants. So if your shoulders are relaxed and you breathe into that diaphragm, take your fist and you put it right below your breastbone and just above your belly button. And you push. That is the area, give or take, where your diaphragm is. So as you breathe in, the only thing that should move is that diaphragm, which is like a balloon, a muscle that expands and contracts. And when you take that deep belly full of air with really relaxed shoulders, the next thing you say should, if you're doing it right, if you're not in your head, get yourself out of your head. Mm-hmm. You're going to speak in probably the range, give or take, of where your best pitch is. That's the simple version of how to do it. Mm-hmm. And every time you take a breath, you can reset your pitch. You can reset where that air and energy is going to come from every time you take a breath.
I have done this on occasions where I meditate.
Yes, very similar.
But then it's almost like there's a separation. I meditate and I do what I think I'm doing it right, at least. And then when the meditation is done and it's namaste, I get up back to my old habits again.
Well, that's
how do I keep this up?
Easy. Again, from my singing coach, she said, Susan, you've got 6 or 7 weeks to get this. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to take 4 Post-it notes. And on the Post-it notes, you write, I will notice my breath, or breathe. 1 on your steering wheel, 1 on your refrigerator, 1 on your computer, 1 on your bathroom mirror. And every time you pass the Post-it note, stop. Now, there's more to the posture, which I would get into later if I were doing the long lesson. Going to stop. But in this case, lower your shoulders, breathe from your belly. And I like to do in on 4 and then out on 6. Out on 6 makes sure you have really exhaled all the air, which is something we don't do. We never think to completely empty our belly. So I like to practice that. In on 4, out on 6, and you're going to do it for a minute. I'll do the math for you. It's about 6 breaths. Stand or sit, do the 6 breaths, and then go on about your day until, you pass the Post-it note again. So when you do that, it becomes, your breathing becomes a little bit more second nature. And when you need to access it on air, on Zoom, on stage, in a conversation with your spouse, you can do it. You can get into it real quick. And then that breathing serves you well for whatever you're presenting.
It becomes second nature to you the more that you do it, just like most things.
Sure, you have to practice.
Because we have such shallow breaths. I only notice that when on a meditation session, because we breathe from here. We literally breathe from the throat or from the chest. And
it's called conversational breath. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And why is it that we literally have to be told, in a sense, to remember our breath? We're too busy. What is going on?
It is that we're too busy, but it's also, I think, that we walk upright. This is going to sound weird. If you look at a baby, babies are born knowing how to do this. They just naturally, instinctively do it. If you've ever changed a baby who doesn't want to be changed, or you're getting her ready for a bath and she doesn't want to get in the bath, what is she going to do? She is going to suck in all the air in the room, and that belly is going to like, whoa, and she's going to let it go. She's going to fly with that. Babies do that. They instinctively know how to breathe. Sometime after we start walking, particularly as we get into 3 and 4 and our conversations or our speaking skills, our words start to develop and we are in conversation with people, it just goes away. It just disappears.
This is so interesting because I'm literally thinking of, when you're changing a baby's diaper, like you said, they don't want to. They take that quiet few second breaths because you can see the mouth is open and the eyes are closed and but those quiet few seconds and they're really drawing this out of you can see it. And then they go.
We should learn from that. We should all learn from that. Maybe that's where primal scream comes from. I don't know, but babies, we could learn a lot from babies.
Out of the mouths of babes, for sure.
Literally.
So when it comes to, like you said, we do public speaking coaching on this podcast. When you are presenting in front of people, let's say you've been called to do a TED Talk. And you apply the same principles of speaking authentically with your authentic voice, your authentic pitch. Does it make a difference that everyone gets given a mic, so we're going to hear them anyway? Or they think, I need to bring out my best voice for anything that projects onto the mic is going to connect with people? Or do people think, oh, I've got to be given a mic, even if I speak softly, that's fine?
The short answer to that is no. Microphones work to some degree, but if you rely on them to get speech and communication out, you have made a dreadful mistake. Speech and communication come from your gut. So you need to speak. You don't have to shout. And a lot of my reporters at the beginning, no, don't shout it. I didn't say do it loudly. I said, do it boldly, do it with intention, do it with determination.
Because shouting can still come from the throat.
Oh my gosh, yeah, and you can really hurt yourself. Yeah. So you're not shouting, you're just if you're passionate, and if you're doing a TED Talk, you better be passionate about what you're talking about. So that will naturally, that passion will bring your breath and your sound into that very much not loud, but very bold range. So you always, I just think of it as being bold. It's not loud. So
it's
don't
not shout,
and microphones, whoever is running your soundboard can adjust. That's why you do a mic check, because hopefully they can turn down the microphone because you're being big and you're filling the stage or you're filling the screen with your personality and with your passion, not, because you're filling the stage. You can't do that. But so don't rely on a microphone. Not ever. Not ever.
Are you familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza?
No.
No, very much. So he teaches about meditation, and what he mentions, he calls them the intrinsic muscles.
Okay.
So meaning when you draw your breath, like you said, from the diaphragm, and he would take way longer than most of us are used to actually make you draw your breath. And then you hold before you exhale. What is the significance of holding?
That's yogic. That definitely comes from yoga. And that's part of the meditation practice. I've tried that, to be honest with you. Oh, okay, maybe I should breathe in on 4, hold, and out on 6. That just makes me short of breath. I don't want to hold my breath. No, and I don't like doing it. Besides, when we're speaking, we don't hold our breath.
Of course not. Yes.
No.
So it's different from yoga, like you said, for yogic meditation versus you are a coach for actual voice and communication.
Yeah.
Practices.
I mean, it's great if you can hold your breath, and I'm sure it quiets the mind. And when we do even the in on 4, out on 6 for a minute, what you're doing is you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system so that your blood pressure is lowered, your heart rate is lowered, and you have sort of put a protective barrier around your sympathetic nervous system, which would release the chemicals and hormones that would do fight or flight. It's what makes the butterflies in your stomach. It's what prompts those voices in your head. When you're breathing and focusing on the breath, it's like it shuts all that down, and it allows you to concentrate on the presentation at hand. Butterflies are good. You need butterflies. It provides the energy. But the breathing, as I like to say, just puts the butterflies in formation and they work for you.
So please explain a little bit more about the nervous system part. I've had a guest before who spoke about the breathing, focusing on your breathing helps calm your nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he put it.
Right.
Would you please explain a little bit more about that?
Oh, I'm not a medical person and I don't have all the physiological nuances down, but you actually have two nervous systems. Central
Right.
nervous system that is actually the smaller of the two nervous systems. And your central nervous system is very much attached to your brain, your pancreas, your liver, your thyroid, your thalamus, all the organs in your body that release hormones and chemicals that keep your body in balance.
Okay.
Your parasympathetic nervous system is actually longer and goes to more parts of your body, but they're not so much associated. In fact, they're not associated with the parts of your body that release hormones and chemicals. So your parasympathetic nervous system is what counteracts your nervous system. And that's breath, and that's your gut, and that's your belly. And in fact, scientists say your gut, which we also refer to as your digestive system and your stomach and your intestines, the gut biome has as much to do with your physical and mental health as anything else in your body. And
Right.
Scientists are now figuring out, your gut has way more to do with your general overall health and well-being than they ever thought before.
Mm-hmm.
So by activating the parasympathetic nervous system, and all we're doing is through breath and relaxation. And what I teach you to do is just concentrate all the energy from your gut up, past your lungs and esophagus, past your vocal cords, and then out through the mask of your face. I don't want any energy being used anywhere else. I mean, unless you have to, if you're holding a mic or you got your phone in one hand because you're going to read something from the phone. The idea is to just condense and relax. And that activates and, it protects you from those crazy chemicals that are coursing through your body, causing you to panic.
So necessary right now. We have so much. That's why they say our brains are firing in all kinds of different directions, because we have so much that we multitask and there's so much going on, and we have our phones giving us notifications and all these sounds driving us crazy. Like you said, it's very different from 20, 40 years ago. Yep. When life was a lot more calmer. And so this is so necessary. That's why we took the 10 minutes to meditate, just calm everything down.
Yes. It also brings, I like to say to my reporters, let's say you're in the newsroom, all hell is breaking loose, you're 45 minutes to air, you don't know what to do next. Oh my God, should I go call that person? Should I edit this piece? Should I write this? Should I go talk to her? What should I do? Well, close your eyes for a minute. Try to take a few breaths, 4, 5. If you can't even do the whole minute, just breathe. Open your eyes. The breath clarifies things. If you try to tune out the circus that's going on around you and tune into the breath, you're going to open your eyes and go, okay, this is what I need to do. Boom, 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 boom.
You are more productive by calming down. Yeah. Instead of rush all the time, thinking you're getting a lot more done.
And speaking of calming down, Use a pause occasionally. We all are so afraid of not having sound around us. When you're speaking to people, when you're in the middle of a conversation, or you're presenting the news, or you're explaining something to your team at work, don't go a mile a minute and don't take pauses. 2 reasons. 1, it allows you to reset your breath. And it also allows your brain to get a little ahead, like, okay, this is what I'm going to do next. But the pause is really, for me, the audience, I need to absorb what you've just told me. So a pause lets me catch up. I'll say to the reporters, you've been working on this story all day. You know it backwards and forwards. You could tell it every which way to Sunday. And then when you go on air, your viewers have no idea what this is. You're the expert. You've been on it all day. I got nothing over here. So walk me through it. Pause. Let me catch up.
Let me breathe and digest.
Exactly.
Susan, like I said, this has been mind-blowing for me because most of all, anything voice related, I've only seen it through a public speaking perspective, and it's only been voice and tone. I had no idea there were underlying issues connected to that.
Sure.
This has been so amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this with us.
The time has gone so quickly. We could sit another hour and keep going on this, because
right?
There are so many tangential areas that we could get into that technically go back to your voice. Sure. I've loved every minute. Thank you so much.
I have enjoyed talking to you as well, and I'm sure the listeners will greatly benefit.
I hope
from
so.
This.
Yeah.
Please
That's my
Korean. Sorry.
That's my hope, is that you come away with a little bit of an actionable, I could try this. Let me think about that. Yeah, that makes a little sense. Let me see how I can work it into my own life. I tell my reporters, I'm going to teach you to eat an elephant, but we're not going to do it all in one bite.
Nope.
We're going to do a little bit at a time. So practice a little bit at a time.
Please repeat that statement about the eyes and the mouth.
If your eyes are the windows to your soul, your mouth, your speech are the front door. Be mindful of that.
Susan Murphy, the broadcast voice coach, has opened our eyes to so much. And more than anything, we've learned some of the breath work we can start doing in order to find our authentic voice.
Yep.
Because we've learned today that your authentic voice is not just speaking up, but there's a voice that you truly are, that's truly inside you.
Yep. Yep. Well done.
Before you go, Susan, please tell us where to find you on social media, because certainly we're going to want to more about this.
My little company is called VOSOT, Better Broadcast Voices. VOSOT, VOSOT. If you're in our business, you know what VOSOT is. It is broadcast shorthand for voiceover sound on tape, which is what we write. Like if a reporter has gone out and done a story, but it's just a little story, she'll write it up and the anchor will read it. And it might have a voice cut in it, but the anchor is reading someone else's story. That's voiceover. And then a sound on tape could be a cut from a person in the story. So my website is susanmurphyvosot.com. And you can certainly find me on LinkedIn. There are a million Susan Murphys. Just find Susan Murphy broadcast voice coach, and you'll find me on LinkedIn.
Susan Murphy, broadcast voice coach. Thank you so much for being here today.
Delighted to be here. I hope I can come back in the future.
Of course, you will always be welcome on this podcast, because we have so much to unpack from this topic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.